Today, the battle between free speech and civilized speech.
Twitter says posting about Trump's death is off limits.
Then Facebook pushes back on the Netflix film, The Social Dilemma.
And New York, is it dead or poised for a rebound?
Jerry Seinfeld and 11 top VCs will log in.
I'm Alexis Sordato, and this is Future Forward.
I am Stephen Rosenbaum. Let us launch. Morning, Alexa.
Good morning.
So
it was fun seeing you 5 years ago on this show.
Yeah, it was 5 years ago, or 7 days, depending on what. It's like every day in this last week has been like a dog year. You know, it's been like, oh my God, we've had another 7 years in between. But anyway, there's a lot of news. There's a lot, and I really want to focus on this free speech versus civilized speech conversation, because I'm kind of in the I'm kind of in the middle of it, to be honest. Where this came from was this week at the Media Lab. There was this big discussion about, comments at our live event that's coming up this week, and what were we going to publish and what were we going to edit, and what was free speech and what was civilized speech. And, and I was tasked with writing a protocol for us on how we were going to manage comments, and realized I had no idea.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's tough not to let our emotions get in the way.
Well, and it's easy to say, well, of course it's obvious, but it's not obvious, right? I mean, it's truly not. And maybe let's just start with Twitter. So we're going to do, we're going to do 3 chapters today. Chapter 1 is going to be the Twitter fights back battle. Chapter 2 is going to be Facebook on the defensive, and chapter 3 is going to be New York and tech. And we'll do them kind of in 10-minute chunks. And by the way, we're welcome to have comments. We're welcome to have people join. Just jump into the comment stream either on YouTube or on Facebook. Ask questions, comment. We'll try to bring all of those comments in as best we can. But let's just start with this Twitter announcement that you cannot tweet that you hope Trump dies from COVID.
Right. I mean, they announced it without saying his name, but it was brought on by the fact that he was diagnosed with COVID.
So, I'm curious as to what the meeting was at Twitter that made this a discussion. Does it mean you can't say you hope anyone dies?
I mean, that's how they wrote it. And so what's interesting is after publishing that or posting that, people like AOC are kind of furious because they've been getting death threats for, as long as they've been in the spotlight. And Twitter has never come forth and said, this is unacceptable behavior on our platform. So
I have had in my stream, people say, kill yourself.
Oh, no. Like to you?
Yeah. You should kill yourself.
Yeah. I mean, there you go. That's like even more egregious.
But these are people that are clearly structuring the comment in such a way as to walk that line. They're not threatening me. They're just suggesting that I should hurt myself. I mean, that's like, cute. That's like cute little hand signals.
Yeah, I think I interpreted their statement to mean that is not that could be reported and you could be suspended for saying that. Now, so
a couple of things. Whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, and presumably if you're listening to this podcast, you lean left of center, but maybe not. I mean, maybe you're which is fine, open to all voices. That being said, I think that however you feel about Trump, this next 4 weeks is going to be incredibly complicated. And I think everyone is tiptoeing around. I'm puzzled by why Twitter thinks this is the thing that, I get when they're, saying fake, inaccurate medical information or fake news or clear things that are clearly and demonstrably false. But to me, this crosses a line in that it's objectionable speech in a public space, but I'm not sure that them diving into making judgments about civility is going to end well for them.
I think what the catalyst was for this is potentially volume. It's one thing for one or two people to be hostile towards a user. I think this is a case of potentially tens of thousands, if not maybe 100,000 plus people saying, using really forceful language.
Okay, perhaps, but well, so let's get to the thing that maybe didn't make its way out into the news before we get to the Senate hearings, which we'll get to in a minute. There is this little known product that popped up in Twitter land called Birdwatch. It wasn't meant to be public. Some intrepid reader, tweeter found it buried in some code, took some screenshots, published it, and then Twitter hid it behind some kind of a login. But it's meant to be some kind of a public curation tool. I mean, I read it trying to understand the specifics of it. Did you have any take on exactly what it was they were building?
No, I mean, my guess is they're just exposing some of their moderator tools to the end user. And so you'd imagine that every single time one of us clicks report this tweet, that it goes into some sort of review queue. My guess is that this feature allows you to actually see if a tweet has sort of been flagged or basically like the footnotes around it. So it's just adding more transparency, I think, to the moderation system. That's my interpretation of it.
So I took it differently. And again, I read it trying to understand it. And by the way, this would be a great opportunity for viewers and listeners to jump in. If you know something about Birdwatch, if you've researched it, if you've paid attention to the technology that's floating out of the Twitter system, we'd love to hear from you. I think, so I've seen Jack Dorsey speak twice about this in public. And both times he's in this very tech geeky way said, well, we're trying to find ways to algorithmically discover civil speech and discern it from, objectionable speech and build AI that will be able to, in some way or another, make conversations more reasonable. I think that's truly a fool's errand. I will tell you that on Progress News Network, which I'm a moderator on, the objectionable, hateful comments outrun the reasonable comments 10 to 1 every day.
I mean, I forgot what I was reading yesterday. I think it was probably on Drew Olenoff's tweet. He was a former TechCrunch writer at Yoda. He was talking about 6,500 tweets of the same robot content, like spam content, being syndicated across the platform, and Twitter basically not having the tools in place to stop it.
Yeah. I mean, I just think, who knows, some of it is Russian trolls, some of it's sock puppets, some of it's just angry right-wing people that are using the freedom of this current platform to flood the airwaves. But I think that the fundamental basis of Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, etc., that allows anyone to say whatever they want without any editorial voice, and then to go and kind of chase down bad actors and try and kind of play whack-a-troll is a failed core piece of infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the pushback, so there's this Senate hearing coming, which brings me, see how I did that? I just kind of
nice.
Yeah, right. Like shifted. So there's this Senate hearing coming up, October 28th. One could argue that I don't know why there's any Senate business on October 28th. A, it's right before Halloween, which makes it spooky and weird. And B, whatever's going to change in terms of the legislation or the strategy around how social media is treated is going to change after the, well, so I guess it may change after the election, and we'll get to that in a minute, but theoretically the election would be a turning point for either of those things. So, that being said, Jack Dorsey says he's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So let me do my Jack Dorsey impersonation of how this is going to go. Well, it's a very complicated problem. We're looking at it deeply. We have a lot of really smart people looking at it, and we're expecting we'll have some technology that'll begin to address it in the not terribly distant future.
That's good, Steve.
Yeah. But I guess my question is, if you were creating the Alexa site and you were going to invite people to come and talk about tech, for example, on Future Forward, as we do, we have comments that come in, we look at them, we publish some of them, we respond to some of them, and we ignore some of them. But that's a human function. That's not an algorithmic function.
Right.
But the reason why I mentioned at the beginning about struggling with this is, so one of the questions that came up at the Media Lab is, well, what if somebody says something objectionable? What if somebody after Tristan Harris's keynote says, I think your film sucked? What if somebody says, worse, uses a curse word? Like, is civility simply a bunch of, kind of bad words? If they say a word with an F in it, do we delete it out? If they say sucked, do we leave it in? Is that really how we're defining civility, is based on kind of a checklist?
I mean, I think event organizers and technologists and organizers have an obligation to have, at a bare minimum, like a code of conduct.
Yep, which we're in the process of publishing. Yes, good, check. Keep going. What else?
A code of conduct. I think moderation is key to having healthy communities. There's a sense of psychological safety that should be promoted. Meaning, I think if you are an asker or a panelist or a speaker, there's a general sense that participating in your space is not going to result in emotional or physical harm. And I do think that if you
I'm not sure I agree with that. I've been in some very sharply worded debates with people that emotional harm. Really? I mean, if I disagree with you and I say I think you're really blowing it on this, does that harm you?
I mean, I think there are degrees of harm. Like, for example, if I were to go on a panel to talk about women's rights, and there were to be a panelist who were to then attack me and say, your ovaries must be really twisted in a knot today. Some people might interpret that as, he's just it's just a figure of speech, or let that roll off your shoulder. But I could see other people being completely offended and say, how is a comment like that supposed to advance the discourse and educate people on the topic?
So it's interesting. So here's why I think it's kind of asymmetrical. So the comments that are on PNN are always personal and always objectionable, harshly objectionable. And I find myself trying to respond with either links or facts, but they just call names. So, which brings me to this next, it's all kind of tied together, right? Because the show has a theme today of sorts. So Facebook rebuts The Social Dilemma. This is a film that is wildly popular on Netflix, interestingly enough. Top 10 most popular films, and a pretty serious watch. And I'm excited about the film. We're doing a screening, by the way. We're doing a Netflix party screening next Tuesday at 7:00. And if you search on Twitter, for example, you can see that there's a bunch of comments up, and you can sign up, and we'll send everyone links to this shared screening. I've never done one of these before. I have no idea. We might have 5 people. We might have 500. Might have 5,000. But we're going to do a Netflix screening the night before Tristan Harris speaks at the NYC Media Lab Summit on Wednesday morning.
Cool.
And, I thought that, so Facebook's pushback was that the documentary was kind of missed the mark. Here, I'll just read you a little bit. This is from CNBC. The rebuttal suggests that Facebook would be worried about the documentary's effects on usage. In a post published on its site, Facebook addressed several concerns it had with the movie, covering topics such as addiction, users being addicted to the product, its algorithm, data privacy, polarization, and election. Quote, rather than offering a nuanced look at technology, it gives a distorted view of how social media platforms work to create a convenient scapegoat for what are difficult and complex social problems, said Facebook. I wonder if they've taken.
Yeah.
I wonder if did they go to the Jack Dorsey School of PR?
I know. Can you pull up? Do you have the infographic that they posted? That little like cheat sheet?
No, I don't know where it is.
I'm like, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's like that little, I don't know, teal 2-pager.
Yep.
So, I mean, candidly, when I read this, I was like almost laughing, right? Like I actually feel bad for the comms people who had to put together that document. I thought it would be the biggest load of BS for me to even have to draft the words that they crafted as the headlines. Like, I'm just gonna, I'll summarize that. Like, what the social dilemma gets wrong. So this is from Facebook's statement. Number 1, addiction. Facebook builds its products to create value, not to be addictive. How could they say that with a straight face?
Well, no one signed it, so maybe the answer is they can't. But go ahead.
They can't. It's like, it's just, again, if that's their number 1 and how they're starting, then you can almost dismiss everything that comes afterwards because it's so false.
Yeah.
Of course, they create products that value addiction. So much of their growth and their like monthly metrics are focused on how many people come back, how many new users are acquired, how much time someone stays on the platform.
It would be like Marlboro cigarettes saying, we don't create cigarettes to be addictive. We just want them to be highly enjoyable.
Yeah.
Go ahead and read a couple more because these are good. And this is actually a good place to go.
Second one, you are not the product. Facebook is funded by advertising so that it remains free for people. As if those two things aren't completely linked. Like, welcome to media. The bigger the audience, the more expensive you can charge.
Yeah. One more.
Third, algorithms. Facebook's algorithm is not mad. It keeps the platform relevant and useful. Holy cow, Cambridge Analytica, like fake news. Like I thought this was embarrassing.
Yeah, I actually have to find this link and this graphic and we'll use it as part of the conversation for when we go to talk to Tristan, because I think I saw the CNBC article, but I didn't see the infographic, so I will dig it up. I think change is coming to social media. I think that's a decision I think that train has left the station. I think that Joe Biden said months ago that he thinks Section 230 has to be rewritten or removed. I don't exactly remember his specifics, but it was one of those things where I immediately responded, holy crap, it's like both Biden and Trump agree on one thing.
Yeah.
So, I guess the question is, if it's going to change and if we're going to see, all right, here, thank you very much. These are oh, it's not even, I thought it was going to be more like pretty. It's actually texty. All right, well, good. Great. This is perfect in a sad, pointless kind of way. I guess my question is, and maybe we take this out to the audience. Does anybody have a right plan for how we think social media is going to change? Does anyone think that there is an opportunity to make change that's going to be positive, or is it simply going to be government censorship? I mean, that's why we started with the Twitter, you can't say that Trump should die thing, because I just think that opens, a massive, unmanageable editorial challenge for any of these platforms to make rules about. Essentially, what they're saying is tone, right? We don't want things that are objectionable from a tone perspective.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are people who are definitely wishing ill will on the platform towards the president and beyond. And
all kinds of people in all politics. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love there to be a no uncivil discussion rule. I just, one of the things that Reddit talks about in all of its early days is that, they had hundreds of different languages being spoken on their platform when they had 7 employees. So how do you manage civility, in a language that you don't necessarily speak?
So, I mean, here's where I net out. You need to try. Like Chris Wallace was set up to fail from the beginning last Tuesday, but he needed to try.
And you think he didn't try?
No, I think he did. And that effort needs to, assuming we have another debate, right? We need to learn from those efforts.
Oh, we're not having another debate.
Yeah.
We were never having another debate. I mean, we'll have next week, we'll have Pence and Harris. Unless there's some national.
Right. But event. I think muting the mics, for example, might be something that we learned is going to be now a tool, a moderation tool. So I think the same thing.
Yeah, but okay, fine. So let's just play this out for a second. So they make that decision. Harris and Pence both agree because they're both not going to step all over each other. Fine, done. But Trump's never going to agree to that. That was a weapon that he deployed. He's not going to take that out of his toolkit.
Yeah, so then I think he needs to not be allowed to participate in a debate. And I think that's where Twitter, Facebook, etc. need to be more heavy-handed with sort of hate speech and tolerance on the platform.
So one of the things I will tell you is I was involved in, I was backstage and recorded a bunch of video during the John Kerry debate prep sessions. Everything is negotiated. The height of the lecterns, the color of the background, the who gets which green room. These are months and months of negotiations. There's no reason why Trump. Anyway, we're off the key subject here, but let's jump to this. So now there's this Fox article, which is actually really interesting. Democratic leaders are banging their head against the wall after private meetings with Facebook on election misinformation. After months of talks, Democrats say Facebook isn't ready for the election.
I'm not surprised. Are you?
Well, not ready. They just haven't had enough. They haven't been around long enough. They haven't prepped long enough, or not ready, meaning I don't know. No, I'm not surprised.
I think it's a combination of both. I think the product, the platform, the algorithms, the tools, the technology itself isn't ready to combat another interference. And then I think from a policy standpoint, their leadership is not ready to be more forthright in sort of being, I think, like a moral compass. Mark Zuckerberg has had every opportunity to basically say he does not, he personally, and therefore his platform, does not tolerate hate speech, and it's pervasive.
All right. So last thing, just very briefly, and then I want to get to a couple minutes on New York. So Facebook moderators at Accenture, which I guess did I know Accenture was moderating Facebook? Maybe I did, are being forced back into the office, and many are scared for their safety.
This is the least surprising headline I've ever read.
Why would Facebook argue that moderation can't be done remotely? I don't understand. For security reasons?
It's a combination of security reasons, but also, like, again, I think it's like, it's not their employees, right? It's Accenture employees, and so they don't have to care as much.
All right, so let's run the play. Facebook calls Accenture, and this is in this article, which you should read. We'll put it in the links. Facebook has estimated 15,000 paid contractors, almost entirely employed by third-party firms, and therefore not eligible for many of the same benefits as corporate employees. So 15,000 people. So Facebook calls Accenture and says, you got to get your people back to work. And Accenture calls its contractors or its employees, I don't know which, probably contractors, and says, you have to get back to the Accenture office because we have a secure connection to Facebook's backend, and you can't do that from home because we don't want to give you login technology. I mean, if that's true, then who the hell has been, reviewing Facebook for the last 7 months?
I mean, there you go. Back to the previous Vox article. Facebook is not prepared.
Okay. All right. So, shit. Yeah. So civil discourse not going to happen. The election is going to be a shit show. But, and we can't say that we hope Donald Trump's going to die because Twitter won't allow us to say that. And I did not say that. I was saying that rhetorically.
Yeah.
Anyway, so last but not least, let's talk about New York. So there was this famous article that said New York's going to die. And what I find really interesting is that among the VC community, lots of people that I talk to have been pleasantly surprised at how vibrant the funding ecosystem has remained for New York startups. This is an Anthony Ha article in TechCrunch. And it's June 23rd, which is a long time ago, but I don't think a lot, from what I'm hearing on the street, not a lot has changed. I mean, are you trepidatious? Are you optimistic? What you're at a startup. What are you guys hearing? Is there money flowing? Is it still everyone's hiding under their desk, somewhere in between?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still so much uncertainty. I won't speak specifically like to Glid, but I think that there are companies who have tremendous opportunity. I feel like I see a Zoom or video or virtual productivity event production startup pop up every 5 seconds now. But I think that there's still a lot of risk, but that's not new. The VC game has always been laced with, uncertainty and no guarantees. And I think these VCs, I'm grateful for them to sort of be rooting for the Big Apple, but their entire profession is incentivized to sell the promise of what is possible.
So I did an interview with the Wall Street Journal last week, and they asked me why I thought New York was uniquely positioned to rebound. And I'd given it some thought, and the best I can come up with is the thing that New York is. I mean, yes, it's fintech and fashion and food and finance and technology and music and entertainment and theater and dance and AR and VR, and I could keep going. It's all these things. But if you look at what knits them all together, New York is the city of ideas. It births ideas, it challenges ideas, it's frothy in that way. You bump into people, you debate things, you discuss, and that makes its physicality, as opposed to being a virtual thing, incredibly valuable. Now, could there be a moment in the future where virtual communities replace physical communities? Sure. But if you go back to what was the very, very first, it's blanking on the name of the very, very first virtual community that was a long time ago.
A Second Life?
Yeah, Second Life, right? So you could have made that argument back when Second Life rolled out, which is like, this is going to replace physical. And it turns out, yeah, not so much. So like in sci-fi land, could we all be sitting in our homes wearing headgear and in virtual rooms and having virtual conversations? Yes. But it appears to not be happening nearly as quickly as the science fiction writers imagined it might. And in the interim, I think New York as a place where ideas percolate is not easily replaceable by anything other than New York.
And I think replace is like the key word. So similar to what you said, like as a marketer, New York has this resilient brand, right? A brand that I think is global and has taken, more than a century to build, right? For Nashville, Austin, and other cities to sort of be in a position to compete, or even virtual worlds, some of that is a function of time.
So I went out to dinner last night, and as we were walking or biking back down Broadway, there was this fabulous booming jazz music. And at first I thought that was speakers. And then as we got closer, I realized that it was the jazz club Smoke. And they'd open all the windows and doors on the front of the building. There was no one inside except on the stage, which was the band. And they put tables all across the street. And everyone was drinking and eating dinner and listening to this extraordinarily beautiful music. And I was like, who thought that up? Who, like at the club, said, we can't have people indoors yet, but we want our music to be shared with people. And so we're going to move the restaurant outdoors and then play the music from the bands, from the stage out through the front. Like that was just pure creativity. There was no game plan for that. And it made me proud of the city.
I love that.
Which brings me to our last piece, the Jerry Seinfeld piece from 60 Minutes. So this is a Deadline Hollywood article, and the headline is Jerry Seinfeld versus, quote, the Putz, round 2. A real New Yorker has to defend the city, the comedian says. So I love Seinfeld for saying this, and kind of taking on the dead forever. Here's the quote. Quote. I have nothing against that guy, Seinfeld tells 60 Minutes this weekend about stand-up New York Comedy Club owner James Alschuler, who wrote the RIP New York article on LinkedIn 2 months ago. He's fine. I don't think that nobody was rebutting it. I didn't think he's fine. I didn't think that nobody was rebutting it. And I realized, I guess that's my job. Somebody, a real New Yorker, has to answer this. In the comfort food category, some people eat macaroni and cheese. Some people eat ramen. Some people go to, some people knit. Everyone has different things they do. Like for me, I can just endlessly watch, not every, but many of the episodes of Seinfeld. And kind of, Bubble Boy. I could watch Bubble Boy just on loop. And I find that very soothing. And there are others. I mean, obviously, the anti-Christmas episode that will forever, change the planet with, what?
Festivus?
No. Yes. Yeah. The Festivus with the pole and the, I think Seinfeld stepping up to defend New York is a wonderful thing. And I am, as a neighbor of his and a fan, I think more New Yorkers have to, New York's not dead. That's absurd. It's silly. Don't get me wrong. Plenty of challenges ahead. Plenty of challenges.
there's nothing more New York than this argument that's taking place, because at the end of the day, New Yorkers have strong opinions. New Yorkers do what's best for themselves, and New Yorkers are never going to fully agree on anything. And as a person who's sitting in Pennsylvania and gave up a lease in New York City, I can see both sides. I never want to commute. I never want to commute on the subway ever again. But would I move back to the city? Absolutely.
Yeah, we don't have time to get into your strategy around Pennsylvania. We'll talk about that another day. All right, we are out of time. That has been a fabulous show, really fun. Hope everyone enjoyed it. And with that, we will be back soon. See ya.